Well, it's 4:45, and I've been talking to Mariana for the last 20 minutes, but now I'm with you. I want to start the show off doing something very special this afternoon. Yesterday, I went jogging at the high school stadium where my son went to high school, and I was jogging on the football field on the turf. And then I started to talk to a very wonderful family, a husband and wife. They were Asian, and they had a young man with them. That was a beautiful young man. His name was Kyle. And Kyle is deaf, and they asked me if I would say hello to Kyle, because he's watching the show right now, and they showed me how to say it in sign language. So this means Kyle, and I'm waving to him, "Hi, Kyle." And when I touched my hand to my heart, that's how Kyle told me he was giving me love, when I touched my hand to my heart. So Kyle, I'm waving to Kyle, and I'm giving Kyle love. So, beautiful person, and I appreciate his mother and dad watching the show. You notice I'm wearing purple today. I'm wearing the same, I don't know if it looks blue to me on the screen, but it's actually purple. And I usually wear a different color every week, but thinking that I didn't want to look like I only had one jersey or one color sweater to wear. And then I realized that priests wear black every time they go before their congregation. And I'm really comfortable in this color, and I'm really comfortable in this particular jersey. So this becomes my, whatever the word is that priests call their clothing. This is my clothing now for Sundays. You see me every Sunday, only on Sunday for 1 hour that we're together. I won't wear this any other time other than Sunday for that 1 hour that we're together. It's going to be a little longer than an hour today. I have a suspicion, because I have a lot of things I want to talk about. And like most of the time, I don't know if what I'm going to talk to you about is going to last an hour or an hour and 15 minutes. But most of the time, Spirit lets me go over 5 or 10 minutes. I want to talk about, first of all, how grateful I am that we received help from Linda and several other people on how to save the archive. I guess evidently it's on YouTube or someplace that we're able to put it on as opposed to being in our broadcast archive. We paid a tribute to Dwayne having a transition of his soul last Sunday. And for whatever reason, we couldn't get it on the archive because of the problem we're having with Justin TV. And with the help of some of the others on the site, and with Mariana using her ingenuity, along with the help from Linda O. Apparently, the show we did tribute to Dwayne, Memoriam Farm, is now on our archive by way of, I think, YouTube. Not Twitter, I think it's YouTube. At any rate, I want to thank you so much for the help you gave and for sharing the tribute we gave Dwayne. Dwayne's, he's with us all the time, and I was reading a reading he gave me. Anyway, it doesn't make a difference. But what's important is that we do have our archives operating now by way of some other method that is being used by Mariana. I'm sure she'll share with you on the website how to get to it. And it really is important to get to it, because I'll tell you a very interesting thing that I sometimes lose sight of. It's 4:44 right now here in Portland, where I am. But I keep forgetting the fact that for some of you, it's 5:44. For some of you, it's 6:44. For some of you, it's 7:44 in the evening. For some of you, it might be 10:44. And if you're in Hawaii, it's actually 3:44, and you're probably not watching it because you're probably out on the beach getting a suntan. So I sometimes lose sight of the fact that it's not 4:44 in the afternoon for everybody else in the world when I'm doing my 4:44 show. That you are on a different time than I am, most of you are. Although there are some of you who are in California, Oregon, and Washington, that it is 4:44 for. As well as perhaps in Western Canada, it's 4:44. And the archive is very important to us because When I look at the end of the day and how many people watch the show, let's say hypothetically it says 20,000 people watch it. I'm just using this hypothetical. There are 20,000 of you. I say, wow, 20,000 people around the world. But it's really not, because it's unlikely that those people who live in Africa, like Kobana, or people who live in Europe, or people who live in Laos, or in other parts of the world, it's maybe 3:44 in the morning, or 2:44 in the morning, or 5:44 in the morning. And you don't get to watch it live. You have to watch in the archive. So always why it surprises me at the end of the week when I look at our statistics for the entire week, how many people watch the show, counting both the live show that you're watching now as well as the archive, my forgetting the reason why they're watching it in the archive, that the numbers sometimes are double and triple. They could go from 10,000 hypothetically to 30,000 or 40,000. I'm just using hypothetical numbers because a tremendous number of people that are from other parts of the world who are not watching it right now because it's either in the middle of the morning. Well, you understand what I'm saying. And so the archive is very, very important to us. And Mariana, right now in Australia, I know it's I think like 9:51 in the morning for you, or 8:51. You just woke up. She's still got her hair in curls. She's wearing a nightgown. No, I'm joking. I say that to her sometimes. She gets a little mad at me. She says, how do you know what I'm wearing? She says, I just got out of bed. Anyway. So anyway, regardless of where you are, or whether you're watching it live, or you're watching this tomorrow, or Tuesday, or Wednesday, or Thursday in the archive, it's great to be with you. I want to share an interesting story with you that somebody brought to my attention. It's about Margaret Mead, who was an anthropologist. Some of you, I'm sure, must have heard of Margaret Mead. She was an anthropologist years and years ago. I'm not sure if she's still alive right now, but she did a study in New Guinea, and it shows you the power of the mind, absolute power of the mind. In her study of these people in New Guinea, they had no pregnancy unless there was marriage. Now think about that. They never had a child born out of wedlock. The only children were born were children of married couples because they had a belief. They didn't understand birth control. They didn't understand how conception took place. But they had a belief that the only way that God would let them have a child is if the couple was married. And as a result of that, the only children were born, the only time the woman conceived was if she was married. And yet they had an attitude towards sex, that sex to them was just like a game. I mean, they considered sex, they had no sexual inhibitions. They engaged in sexual activities from the time they were little children, both incestuously as well as neighbors or friends, because they did not consider it a taboo. They did not consider it a moral issue. They considered it just part of their life, just as someone would drink a glass of water or play a child's game or play a game of cards. But they honestly believed in their minds that they would never conceive, and that conception could only happen to a married couple. And their knowledge, their minds were so powerful with that belief that there never was a child born in wedlock, ever. Now think about that. That they could engage in copulation since they were young children and never have a child. But when they got married, when a man and woman got married, then a pregnancy would occur. They're thinking that this was basically a covenant that God made, that they would only have children if they were married. Is that incredible? Margaret Mead documented it. That was their lifestyle in terms of believing without any sexual inhibitions, and that there was never a child ever born out of wedlock, only out of the result of marriage. Now, if that could happen, I guess it's also conceivable that an immaculate conception could take place too. I'm just guessing now. That an immaculate conception could take place if indeed the mind could be that powerful that could avoid conception, even though a male and female might have engaged in activities in the act of what would normally be procreating since they're little children, And if they never married, they never had a child. They never would have a child if they never married. It was only the act, the ceremony, which gave them the marriage, which then created the covenant in their minds that God would allow them to conceive children. This is documented by Margaret Mead. Her name is spelled M-E-A-D-E, and it took place in a study she did in New Guinea. Well, I haven't Googled it, but I'm assuming the story is true because the person who told it to me was a person that I have a lot of respect for that I don't think would ever make up that story. So if you want to, after the show's over, determine whether or not the story is an accurate story and give us some credibility, my suggestion would be to put in Google Margaret Mead study in New Guinea, sexual study, birth control, birth study in New Guinea, or something of that nature. In fact, I'll do that myself after the show's over because now I'm curious. There were a lot of questions that were answered. A lot of questions were asked on different subjects during the week. And this time I have put them in order. Normally I shuffle them up like a deck of cards, but I have put them in order today. And the first question someone asked me is about the Los Angeles event on May 27th. I want to know, is it a Tuesday? I don't think May 27th is a Tuesday. If it is, I gave you the wrong date. Let me look at the calendar right now. At any rate, I'm sorry. Let me just take a minute to look this up. Oh, yeah, you're right. 27th would be on Tuesday. It should have been May 24th and May 25th. May 24th and May 25th. But I want to tell you something that's very interesting. For those of you who have ever heard of the name of Michael Beckman in Agape down in Los Angeles, well, his producer of his shows for 7 years has been a gentleman by the name of Stephen Powers. And Stephen and Michael Beckman parted ways. Now, you might, those of you know who Michael Beckman is, he's Afro-American. Well, he's an American with black skin, and he's got long dreads, and he's he's well known. You might have seen him on television a number of times. And the director of Agape, the producer and director of Agape, is a man by the name of Stephen Powers. And Stephen has agreed to become our director because he and Michael parted ways about 4 months ago. So Stephen's going to be our director, and he's got incredible credentials, because he basically put Michael on the map, made Michael famous. He was his director for 7 years, and his audience went from a couple of hundred to like 8,000 under the guidance and productions supervision of Stephen Powers. And Stephen, you can Google his name also, Stephen, S-T-E-P-H-E-N Powers. And Stephen is well known in Hollywood circles, being one of the top producers of shows. And Stephen is now our producer of our Miracles, of our Music America show. So glad to have Stephen on board. And I saw Laurie Jones today at Chapel, and she also was very impressed. She said, "That's great. Laurie's one of our 3 singers, Laurie Jones, Nadine Shah, and Robbie Barrett." And Laurie gave Laurie a hug, and she said she was very excited that Stephen, she doesn't know in person, but she knows who Michael Beckman is, and she's very excited that Stephen's going to be our producer and director of our show. But you're right, that May 27th is wrong, which is a Tuesday. It's May 24th and 25th that we're tentatively scheduled now. If we can't make it by the month of May, because we have such a short time between now and May, then we'll have it in June. But right now, I'm very hopeful we can have it the last weekend in May. And that question was from Linda O. Okay, the next question is from Thomas Wheatley. Was Joshua married in his 20s? Answer was, he wasn't married in his 20s or his 30s or his teens. He was never married. Did he have children? That's question number 2. No, he did not have any children. How many? Well, if you didn't have any children, the answer would be 0. And some insight to the undocumented years. In one line, Thomas, you got in 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. That's a record. I'm teasing, but he was never married, and he had no children. And the only places years are not documented is in the Gospels. His years he spent are documented in my book. So I would suggest you to read Time for Truth or The Commitment, and I have documented his years, which I'm going to go into because another question comes up where they ask me what did he do during his undocumented years. So this one is from Bonnie. Bonnie, how are you? I love you, Bonnie. You know you're very special. Bonnie came here and spent about 4 days in our part of town, around my area. She stayed at Tammy Ann's house, and Bonnie and I had an opportunity to spend 2 days together. We had a luncheon that lasted about 3 hours, and then she was on the show with me. That's right, she was on the show with me here in this room. She did the show with me, so we spent another, I'd say, 3/4 of the day together. And they invited me to have dinner with them that night at Tammy Ann's house, and I couldn't. That would have been on Sunday. Anyway, she says she's talking to Thomas, who just asked a question. She said, Thomas, the topic of whether Joshua was married or not has been discussed several times over recent years here, and Nick says no. If you read Sharon's channel message from Joshua, Joshua says he doesn't want to go there about his relationship with Mary Magdalene. They were just friends. Whether Joshua was married in secret at one time or another, it may be possible, but it isn't recorded everywhere. Obviously, if he were, it would have been kept a secret for protection of his wife and family. No, Joshua didn't die. Oh, then she talked about another thing. I agree with her that no, he was not married. I agree with her that he does not want to go there. He doesn't want to discuss his private life. He just doesn't. He was very explicit about that in his letter to us. I'm talking about Jesus. I'm talking about Joshua. And no, there wasn't. And if he did, he would be secret. But there was no secret to it. Joshua was not married, never was, did not have any children. And that's just the reality of it. I assumed if he had, then he would keep it a secret, but it didn't happen. So Bonnie is partially right, saying that if he was, no, she's right, that if he was married, he would have kept it a secret. But she says it may be possible. I guess that's true too. It may have been possible, but it wasn't, because he and Mary were just friends. And it's true that Joshua doesn't want us talking about it. So I'm not talking about it anymore. Then she goes on to say, no, Joshua didn't die for our sins. And that's true. He did not die for our sins, because what sins do you think you committed that was so grievous that he would give up his life, that he would die, that he would commit suicide, so to speak, because of some grievous sin you committed? Do you know of one you committed that grievous? It so upsets, it doesn't upset me, it's so ridiculous when the church says he died for our sins. First of all, he died 2,000 years ago. How in the world would he have anticipated what sins you were going to do 2,000 years later, that he would die because of some sin you did? And I ask you again, what sin did you do that was so grievous that you would have persuaded Jesus? I'm being facetious, that's why I'm calling him Jesus. That you have persuaded Joshua that he would have given up his life and committed suicide to be nailed to a cross because of some sin you committed. I don't know how you feel like I do when this church says that he died because of your sins. Frankly, it gets me upset. It gets me upset. Died for our sins. Where's it even coming from? Maybe he died for, no, I don't want to say it. I'm going to say for the sins of maybe the priests who who were pedophiles and were using as young children, maybe their sins. But no sin that I don't think any of you ever committed was ever so grievous that Joshua could say, 2,000 years from now, so-and-so on Nick's chapel, on Nick's website, committed a sin so grievous, I think I'll go ahead and take my life today. In the year 2030, in the year 33, which really wasn't 33, but they say it was the year 33. So I'm going to kill myself today, in the year 33, because something that so-and-so is going to do 2,000 years from now. It's so beyond incredible that it's hard to even think about. So no, Bonnie's right. Joshua did not die for our sins. And now I'll go on to the next question. This one comes from Dan McQuarrie. And Dan says, there was quite a number of books published that speculated on Joshua's so-called lost 30 years. I don't think Joshua lost those 30 years. I think he felt he lived them. Anyway, some say he was in India. Others say he was in Tibet. Probably would prefer going to Hawaii. I think Hawaii would have been more fun to be with than in Tibet. Anyway, so where was he during that time? For how long? Doing what? Was he married during that time? Some say he was learning to do what? How to suffer or die for us? I don't know if you were being facetious, Dan. I think you were when you said, was he learning how to suffer or die for us? I assume you were being facetious, but let's take those questions one at a time. Because there was about 7 questions in here, in this one little paragraph. There was quite a number of books published that speculated on Joshua's so-called lost 30 years. Those 30 years weren't lost. The reason why they're not, Joshua, first of all, I don't think it was 30 years, but they have Joshua as a teenager going into a temple. So let's say he was 10 years old then. Then he died at 33, so it'd be like more like 20 years. It was 20 years, which they don't account for his time in the New Testament. And there's a reason for that. There was a period of 20 years until Joshua was around 30 years old. I'd say from the ages 10 to 30, during that 20-year period, from 10 to 30, where he hadn't started doing his healings yet. And he hadn't started doing miracles, which it means showing the intervention of God in his life. And he went around talking to people and giving talks and going from village to village. And people thought, oh, here's another person who's claiming he knows more than everybody else. There were a lot of people at that time. I say a lot, maybe 10 or 15, just like there is in the United States. So we have 10 or 15 people in the United States that go around telling us how we should live, telling us. Now, of course, we have thousands, in every church. But back then, there were people that would go around from village to village that would talk to people and say, let me tell you what God's messages are. And they'd say, okay, here comes another person that thinks he knows God's messages. And Joshua was looked at like one of those people, one of that group of people that traveled. But Joshua realized he didn't have their attention. And he didn't have the respect for the messages. So that's when he began doing healings, about the age of 30. And it was the age of 30 that he started doing miracles. And that's when he started drawing large crowds as a result of his miracles. And that's when they pick up his life in the Gospels. So from age 10 to 30, during a 20-year span, they never mentioned him. Because what are they going to say? He went from village to village and no one paid attention to him? But if you notice when they start talking about him in the Gospels, when he's an adult, they have him doing miracles. And that's the reason why they don't talk about him, because they didn't feel the years he spent from age 10 to 30 were worthy of being talked about. And he acknowledges that until he started doing miracles, and that was the reason he began doing miracles, so he could get the credibility he needed for people to realize that the words he was speaking truly were the words of God, and that he was a messenger of God. And you say, some say he was in India, in Tibet. No, he never went to India or Tibet. I want you to look at a map of Jerusalem, and you tell me how he could have traveled on foot across the Himalayan mountains, across the deserts, to get to Tibet in India. There were no airplanes in those days. There were no roads. You would have had to go by foot. How in the world could he have gone from Jerusalem to India? Look at the map of the world. And you say, yeah, or Tibet. There's no way he could have gone in the year 2000, in the year 1000, 2,000 years ago by foot or camel. There were no trains. There were no planes. He would have had to go by foot. It would have taken him 20 years to get there, if he could have gotten there at all. I want you to look at a map of the world when this show's over, and you tell me whether you could have gone by foot from Jerusalem to Tibet in India if you had lived 2,000 years ago. So no, he did not go to India, and he did not go to Tibet. So you say, where was he during that time? I've already told you. He was going through Galilee, Judea, the provinces of Galilee, the provinces of Judea, and I'm trying to think right now the name of the third province, Galilee. Anyway, the other one is where in the western part of it. I got a map here. Oh, Samaria. Samaria is the other province. He went through the areas of Samaria. I should show you this. You might be interested in seeing this. I'll be right back. Don't go away. Oh, you got a reflection from the window. I have Mariana maybe open my drapes. But this is a map of the Holy Land back then. And there are 3 provinces. You have Galilee here, Samaria here. That's why it's called the Galilean. Samaria here. That's why it's called the Nazareth, because Nazareth is right here, even though he wasn't from Nazareth. And Judea is right down here. You can't see, but Judea is down here. Anyway, Mariana maybe open up the blinds to try to open the window because of the smoke. So there's a big reflection now. It's coming off of that picture I held up because it's got a glass frame over it. So the question was, no, he did not go to Tibet. He traveled around Samaria, the provinces, the 3 provinces of the Holy Land, which were Samaria, where Nazareth was located. Galilee, he was a Galilean. Couldn't be both. Could he be in the Nazarethian, Jeshua of Nazareth, and also be Jeshua of the Galilean? Because they're 2 different states. That's like saying that I'm from Boston. I'm a Bostonian, and saying that I'm also a New Yorker. I'm either a Bostonian or a New Yorker. So he couldn't have been both a Galilean as well as a Nazarene. He was a Galilean. He was from Capernaum. And that's where he was traveling. And was he married at that time? We've already answered that question. No, he was not married. And so some say he was learning. Well, we learn every day, don't we? We're all learning. Hopefully you're learning something today during the show. And you say to do what? How to suffer or to die for us? I assume you meant that in a manner that you weren't trying to be insulting, but you're trying to say that hopefully that obviously Joshua didn't learn how to suffer or to die for us. I think your context meaning that it's kind of ridiculous that the church would say that he actually spent time learning how to suffer and to die for us. Because he lived for us. Joshua lived for us. To show us the way. To teach us how to live our lives with universal love and universal compassion. To be an example for humankind, so that one day we could all become at one with Christ consciousness. That's what he lived for. To live for us, not to die for us. The next question came from Donna Anderson. Do you have any idea when Jeshua's real birthday was? Some think it must have been spring because the shepherds were in the fields. I know December 25th was chosen to compete with the winters. You are so right. He was not born December 25th. Can you imagine hark, herald angels sing, shepherds with their newborn flock? Do you think that shepherds actually be out in the field on December 25th in the middle of winter with their flock? He was not born December 25th, and I don't think it's really that important when we decide to celebrate his birthday. Celebrate his birthday. He was born in September, in reality, which was in the fall. You asked if he was born in the spring because the shepherds were in the field. Well, the shepherds were in the field also in the fall. He was born in September, and I really don't think it's that important what month he was born, that Jeshua was born. And I want to say to the 21 people that are watching on Justin TV, when I say Jeshua, I'm talking about the person that you probably call Jesus. And if you want to come to my website and watch this on the website, it's nickbunick.com. Go to live broadcast. But anyway, he was born in September. I think he told me once, I think he said September 19th. I can't remember. He told me once what day he was born. I mean, didn't tell me 2,000 years ago. He told me that recently. He told me that during this lifetime that he was born in September. And he gets very, very sad sometimes during our Christmas time because of the Christmas carols wrongfully portraying, not the beautiful Christmas carols, but the ones that wrongfully portray him as the Son of God. Some of the songs say, born the King of, he never called himself a king. He feels really sad when they start singing those Christmas carols, which they call him the King of the, I can't remember what the words are, but some of the Christmas carols call him a king. And some, I try to remember what the words were, but he doesn't consider himself a king. So some of the Christmas carols actually get him upset. I'm being candid with you, truly. I'm not being facetious. Some of the Christmas carols, he really objects to the wording of it. King of men or king of whatever, because he doesn't consider himself a king. And he gets upset when they refer to him in the Christmas carols as a king. And some of them are beautiful, Silent Night, Holy Night. Some of the songs are beautiful at Christmas time. And some he finds offensive. But he doesn't care if they want to celebrate his birthday December 25th. He himself doesn't celebrate on December 25th. He celebrates in September. But I mean, when he's on earth incarnated in his present life as in flesh, he celebrates in September. Which brings me to a whole another subject. You know that I'm supposed to meet with him. I do know now the dates I'm supposed to meet with him. Or maybe you don't know. Have I told you that he wants to have me fly down to California? I think I did tell you. I'm not going to tell you the dates, but he is meeting with Sharon and myself in April. And we are meeting in Southern California. I'm not telling you the location where it's Southern California because I don't think I don't think it would be appropriate for me to do that in case somebody will say, well, gee, I think I'll go down to such and such city and be there also because I'd like to see him. I'm not trying to be rude to you. He wants the meeting to be private. He said he has two others he's bringing with him from the spiritual world, and he has Sharon and myself flying in. And I'm going by myself also, and Sharon's going by herself, and we're going to meet with him for 3 days. He says he thinks it might be 2.5 days, depending how quickly he can go over the teachings, what he wants to share with me. But he's very specific that he wants to have those 3 days blocked out, that there's no other activities going on during the 3 days, such as, well, I told you what other activities, and then would give away where we're going. But at any rate, it's during the month of April. But I went off on a tangent like I usually do. His birthday was in September, not in December 25th. And the point I was making was that he gets a little bit upset at Easter time. He feels very uncomfortable at Easter time, which you can well imagine why, the memories of what took place on Easter Sunday, Good Friday. Those aren't pleasant memories to him. So we purposely are not doing it we're not getting together to meet with him during Good Friday or Easter Sunday for that reason. So we know those dates I'm not going to be meeting with him. Okay. Randy Rios, quote for the day. Wow. I want you to know Billy Graham said this, not me. Quote, by nature, because of our sin, we are not members of God's family, and we don't have any right to inherit eternal life. End of quote. Billy, it'd be rude for me to put up a whole 5 fingers. It'd be rude for me to put up 1. But I want to tell you, my friend, I don't care if you're 95 years old and you're ready to make a transition. For you to say, by nature, because of our sin, we're not members of God's family and we don't have any right to inherit eternal life, end of quote. Wow. You know, I never was a fan of yours, Mr. Graham. And you spoke in front of audiences of thousands and thousands of people. And I read your history. I read the history of how you do it. I read the history of how when you go into a city, a week before that, you give thousands and thousands of dollars to volunteers to go door to door to solicit people to come to watch, listen to you speak. And you give thousands of dollars to the church to tell the people that you're coming to town and to listen to you speak at some stadium. And when the people speak in the stadium, there might be 10,000 people in the audience, but 2/3 of those people are volunteers who, when those people to get up to receive their healing from you, or their whatever it is, their born-again Christianity from you, you notice there's 2 people walking with them. And those 2 people immediately get their names and their phone numbers so they can contact them and they can come to church to join the church. So 2/3 of those people, of those 10,000 people, are people that were, 1/3 were persuaded and encouraged. Oh, I don't want to start getting emotional about it. 1/3 of those people were encouraged and persuaded and coerced to come. The other 2/3 are volunteers that are sitting there in the audience of those 10,000 people in the stands, who are there because they're being paid by their church, or they've been encouraged by the church to walk with those people when the people go out from the stands. If you ever went to one of the shows, you watch those 3 people walking together, and that one of them will get up in front of you and the other 2 will stand back a little bit. And then as soon as that person's through receiving his blessings from you or whatever you do that makes you so special, I'm sorry, I'm being facetious, but I'm not. It's the truth. They walk back to them and they get their names and their phone numbers so they can call them to make sure, tell them to join the church, because the church is trying to decrease their membership. That's what the whole purpose of it is. It's for the church to increase their membership, and that's how you get the people, and that's why you get your large audiences. And I'm not trying to put you down. It's very clever marketing. And when they say 10,000 people showed up to listen to Billy Graham speak, they tell them they're sinners and they're not going to go there, and they're not going to go to heaven unless they are born again, because you do some kind of blessing on them. I'm sorry, Mr. Graham. I don't agree with you, and I'm not a fan of yours. And I know Mariana's going to get mad at me and say, Nick, there's a lot of people here that think he's an icon on our show. I can't help it. You're not an icon in my mind, Mr. Graham. When you say again, quote, by nature, because of our sin, we are not members of God's family, and we don't have any right to inherit eternal life. If some of you are offended with what I just said about Billy Graham, that means that you agree with him, that you are not a member of our family, and that you don't have the right to inherit eternal life. Then, frankly, you're in the wrong church. You're in the wrong chapel. Although I have no restrictions, my door is always open in this chapel, unless it's closed. It's never closed. But the reality of it is, I don't agree with Mr. Graham. And Randy, you want to say that next sentence, that quote from Randy, this is exactly why you are no longer referred to yourself as being a Christian. I think you can be a believer in Christ without being a Christian. I think you can be a believer in the teachings of Joshua without being a Christian. But I know what you're saying, Randy, why you are not a member of that religion, or at least a follower of Billy Graham's version of Christianity. And I'm not either. So Randy, wow, that was great for you to come up with that quotation of Billy Graham's. Then we have Randy also saying, I was raised as a Christian. This is Randy saying, for 18 years, it was beat into my head that I was a sinner in need of salvation. I politely told them they could stick their salvation where the sun does. Why am I reading this? Oh, okay. They could stick their salvation where the sun doesn't shine. Then I spent 20 years in rabid rebellion, living only for selfish personal pleasure. God, what a confession you're making, Randy. I'm not even your priest. Then I grew up. This is Randy saying he grew up, and he spent the next 20 years searching for answers. What does it all mean? And I found them. Seek and you'll find His truth. Now finally, my soul, Randy's saying, has peace and comfort in knowing that I am part of all that is. I can truly say I was reborn, born again, rebirth, enlightenment, redemption, salvation. Does it all mean the same thing in the end? Question mark. That's pretty powerful, Randy. Pretty powerful. So you were born again, but you're not a born-again Christian. You were born again. I wouldn't know if I'd even call it born again. I'd say maybe you were born for the first time with a true understanding of the reality of your relationship with God and the purpose of your life. So I don't know if I'd call that being born again. I guess it would be, because you did have a physical birth as a child through your mother. And then you were born again years later when you really did realize what your relationship with God was. So in that sense, you were born again. But there's a lot of pain and anguish and passion in what you're saying regarding how you felt, how you politely told them they could stick their salvation where the sun doesn't shine. It must have been a painful experience for you as a child, because you said that it was 20 years ago, so you must have been early, maybe a teenager or in your early 20s when it happened. Well, you have the guts to do it, Randy, and you have the insight and wisdom to recognize that what they were telling you was not the right path. Then we have Monica saying that on the subject of when these people, for those of you who don't know, I asked the question, was a born-again Christian mean? Because I really didn't know what it meant. I honestly and truly didn't know what a born-again Christian meant. Did it mean, it didn't obviously mean rebirthing. Did you mean you gave up the true religion, Christian religion, then then went ahead and took it back again? So I don't know. I don't know what reborn again meant. So I asked that question. I got some great answers. I think Monica's answer is probably as good as any. She said, Nick, I think of born again Christians are those who have recommitted to their faith and are more involved than before. I'm not sure, however, why they say, quote, I'm a born-again Christian, end of quote, in conversation. Well, I think you're right. I think your answer probably was a good answer. Bonnie gave a great answer also. She gave hers was long, it took with 2 paragraphs. So you're saying, Nick, you think a born-again Christian is a person who has recommitted their faith and are more involved than they were before. And I think that answer was very concise, very to the point. And I think it's probably right on. So it was a good discussion we had about that. And now we got to the messages. Wow, it's 5:31. Can't believe I've been doing this for 45 minutes. Then we get to the question of about Jeshua's letter that he wrote to us. And there's a comment that was made by Linda O. talking about core values. You know what? I think I should just go right into his letters. I think that we're going to be here all day. We'll be here for 2 hours if I keep the format I have now, because I can't believe I've been with you for 45 minutes. It's 5:32, started at 4:44. I'm just having ginger ale and Angostura bitters. I recommend it to you all. Tastes delicious, and it's just ginger and Angostura. It's a great drink. Okay. This is the letter we got from Jeshua on February 21st. And today is February 22nd. I guess I printed it out on the 21st. I think I got it on the 20th 2 days ago. I'm going to read it out loud because some of you may not have read it. And Mariana did post it today, earlier today. Maybe last night she posted it. Most of you wouldn't have read it till today because she's on different times than we were on, so it would have been anyway. Core values do not change. Implementation does, is the theme of Jeshua's letter to us. He says to Nick and his spiritual family, Dear Nick, I write this letter to you, but it's truly understanding that you'll pass it on to those in your spiritual family, which of course we did. So I write to them as well as I write to you. I will speak of several things this month. I will speak of the Torah you're putting together, and I would ask that the purpose of this Torah be clearly stated. I'm sure that you and those you are working with are doing that, and always do that. And yet I would ask again that this purpose be put, since it is always since there is a beautiful poetic purpose, that you consider use poetic language to express the sincerity, the joy, the comradeship, the healing that will come from this Torah. Now I would also speak of love. This is a topic that I'm certain could fill, again, this is Jeshua's words of speaking. This is his letter to us. This is a topic that I'm certain could fill and does fill an entire wing of some massive library. I speak, of course, of spiritual love. I speak of the love that I anchored in humanity's mindset. I did not do this alone. It must be absolutely clear. I may have been the primary spokesman. It was my mission. It was my soul's journey for that particular life as Yeshua of Nazareth. But I did not do it alone, nor were all those who aided me men, as might be assumed given what has come down to the ages as the official version of what happened. And we know that. I've talked to you about the fact that half of his disciples, which means pupils, the Greek word disciples, were women. So he's saying that they were not just men. I'm not sure why he's making the issue of that, but goes on to say, Nick, you know more than anyone that much of what has come down has been distorted. And among those distortions is the concept that men must be the leaders. Now, it is not going to stretch anyone's imagination to understand that the culture of those days was different. But you see, what happens? What happens when culture carries on without having thought changing? What happens? Well, what he's basically saying is that there are many of you, most of you in the audience who are women. I have more women in our chapel than I do have men. I think. Maybe not. Maybe it's 50-50. But he's saying that for so long, women have been persecuted against and discriminated against. And even today, women's rights are just becoming more and more recognized. We're getting more women in government, more women CEOs of corporations. And he goes on to say that think of any living, growing, healthy environment. And what do you have? You do not have stagnation. You have evolution. You have change. You have core values, but from those core values grow many different ways of doing things. So when I reclaim my teachings, I'm reclaiming the core values and not the way those values were implemented, but reclaiming the core values so that they can be re-examined for appropriate implementation today. That is what I'm about, and that is what I'm doing. It's the same cosmic core value, the same value of God, the same value that lives within each and every one of us. For you are sparks of God, just as I am. And the core value is the same. The same for you as it is for me. Starting to get ungrounded, meaning a lot of energy. It is there. It is part of the source. It is part of the divinity that we share. But how is that value, that core value of love manifested today? That is a question to be asked. How is that manifested today? What can be a change to achieve a better manifestation, a better expression of the core value of love? What needs to change? What needs to be retained? You see, change does not mean throwing everything away. Change must be done with thought, with care, and with consideration for the greater good. I don't think I'm giving you anything you don't know already. No, I don't think I'm telling you anything new. But what I am doing is giving you permission to understand the core value of love. Be brave enough to discuss the core value of love and how today that can be best implemented locally and internationally. That is all I'll really say. I simply hope that you'll consider what I've said. The core value does not change, but the impartation does and must. Because humanity is an evolving spirituality. And that is why the implementation of the core value must change, because humanity is evolving spiritually. Well, I got so much, my chakras are just literally totally open right now. And as you evolve spiritually, your consciousness expands. And as your consciousness expands, the implementation of the core values has a much broader range available to you, and your inherent creativity will guide you to new implementation. Broader implementation, more effective implementation of the very same core value. That is part of the great tomorrow, that the core values are discovered and manifested in new ways, appropriate to humanity as evolving spiritual beings with expanding consciousness, living in the world and shaping that tomorrow. That is what I would say for this month. I thank you, your friend Yeshua of Nazareth. Thank you. He said thank you again. Of course, those are things I wrote about in the Great Tomorrow, changing humanity. And he says that also. That is part of the Great Tomorrow. Let's go to Mother Mary's. Hers has a totally different theme to it, a different energy. Mother Mary's theme is you can be a center of calm, a center of love. To Nick and the spiritual family, my dear friends, there is so much that I would tell you. There's so much. I want to change the lighting. It's getting dark. I'll put the light on. Okay. There's so much I would tell you. There's so very much that I would share with you so that you and I can feel even closer as you travel the journey of the months and the years ahead. For they will be stressful times for humanity. There's people like you that we turn to in order to encourage you to face yourselves and to spread the calm and to spread the goodwill and to set an example of courage and strength and calm and belief, even if the world around you seems to be very much finding new ways to express chaos. Now she's talking to you. So these are words. She's not talking to me. She's talking to everyone. Now why do I sound so ominous? It's been said that humanity has been abusing Mother Earth. I don't think any of you would disagree with that statement. Humanity has been, indeed, abusing Mother Earth, who gives all humanity life. And this has been both direct and indirect. Indirectly through the harm some of the decisions have been made have on other inhabitants of Mother Earth. Now remember, Mother Earth, she being mother, she refers herself as Mother Mary. She identifies with Mother Earth more than a person would, not a person on Earth would. In addition, it's been said that the vibrations arising from Mother Earth. This has been called many things, like a shift among them. Some would have us traveling into another dimension. These are all ways of expressing of interpreting a sense truth, of interpreting a perceived truth, and translating it into a language. In point of fact, the vibrations of Earth are rising and contributing to the uncomfortable responses that express themselves as earthquakes and very bad winter storms, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions. You must say that Mother Earth is detoxifying. For those of you who have been international healing, detoxification is not unknown to you, while detoxification is not unknown Mother Earth either. It's 3:43. I'm not going to finish Mother Mary's letter right now. The letter was really meant for you, not for me. It was meant to all of us, so you can read it on your own on the site. Mariana posted it on the site. It's probably on the archives also under Mother Mary, Artist Mother Mary. I assume she put it on there too. We've been together for an hour now. And I want to do one more thing with you. I told you it's going to run a little longer. I want to talk about ego. How ego affects our freedom. You know, the ego's idea of freedom is actually one of limitation, selfishness, competition, and manipulation. It's the idea of ego freedom, frequently referred to usually grandiosely by politicians, constitutionalists, and philosophers who really understand the implications of people having unlimited ego. Still less of these people understand the meaning of real freedom as an attribute of God and awakened beings. who only love, who only know love, who only know love and give love to others. Those people who advocate ego freedom, meaning that you should have freedom of living an ego with minimal restrictions, they don't seem to realize what the consequences are when egos are set loose to do whatever they like. Let me just give you a few consequences, a few examples. As egos, are we supposed to be free to attack people who anger us as much as we like to and deprive them of their freedom? Are we to be the judges of that, as opposed to living in our soul mind, to be able to attack other people with anger who don't agree with us? Our ego is supposed to be free to charge whatever interest we like, and charge whatever the market will stand. I'm speaking now commercially speaking, in the business world, especially in pharmaceutical products. Are we supposed to be free? Is the people in the world, commercially speaking, supposed to be free to charge us anything they want in pharmaceuticals, regardless of the size of the profits they make, when it impairs our health, when they could actually produce it for a fraction of what they do? Our egos supposed to be free to be in discrete collusion in the marketplace or in organizations as much as we like, to be able to collusion together and say, let's charge this amount of money. If we all charge this amount of money, that everybody has to pay that price because we're in collusion with one another. Does their ego give them the right to do that? Because so many things you pay for, so many things we buy, the necessities of life, we're paying incredible markups on because of the collusion between the manufacturer of those products. Because one can't reduce their price, because if they do, the others will. Why would they? They'd rather be in collusion with the others in order to charge more money. What gives them the right to do that? I mean, they do have the right, but it's the egos that do that, think they have the right to do it. Are their egos such as free to make as much profit as they can get for their customers, even if they are in discrete collusion? Egos are allowed to free to impose our ego laws on people, other people, or creatures, whether they like it or not. Creatures meaning animals, especially inferiors that our egos call inferior to us, such as children, people that work for us, our employees, women, people of other races than us that don't have the same color of skin, or from other countries and cultures, or even higher animals such as whales. What gives us the right to impose our egos, our wills, on people that are not the same color skin as we are because we might think they're inferior to us, or people that are from other cultures or other races, or men that, as Jess was saying earlier, thinking that men are supposed to be superior to women, which of course is finding out that's not true. More and more women are holding positions of responsibility that only men held years ago. And we all know the story about the whales, how, as an example, how we've taken advantage of how animal world as though they had no rights either, whether it be whales or dolphins. Do we have the right, do the egos give us the right to feel free to starve people, to deprive people of their health, to limit their education, hobble their development by our greediness? But we're doing that in some parts of the world. We starve people and treat them like they're inferior. Are our egos free to make all the rules and laws which guarantee our freedom to do it anything we want at the expense of those who are less brighter than we are? Maybe we think they're inferior or disadvantaged. Or even those who are not interested in competition, and those who are primarily interested in the welfare and the well-being of the human race. If people don't want to compete with them, I want to go for 10. I think those are the words I feel. Do we have the right? Does egos give us a right to pollute our atmosphere and our environment? as much as we like, especially in many cases a byproduct of making a profit. Companies that pollute our environment and don't care because they're making a profit and building a product that they are using their waste to pollute our rivers, our waterways. Does that equal give us a right to rape Mother Earth of so many profitable minerals and profitable products that we like, including decimating our rainforests? Do our equals give us the right to kill off hundreds of species every year because they get in the way of making money or our pleasures, and we don't consider them and make them become endangered species? We have a right to do that. I'm looking at some notes here. I don't think we have those rights. That's why I speak so often of living in a soul mind. When you're living in a soul mind rather than your ego mind, you have respect for everything that's alive on earth. And I'm not saying everybody should be I happen to be a pescatarian, and I only eat fish, vegetables, and fruit. The word pesca comes from the word fish in Latin. I don't think I have the right to eat meat. But I'm not saying you don't have that right. If you choose to, God gave you the gift of free will. You have the right to exercise your free will. I'm just saying how I feel. And you might say, okay, Nick, why is fish okay? I'm not sure why. I know that Joshua ate fish. Remember, he gave a loaf of bread and pieces of fish in the Sermon on the Mount, in the Sea of Galilee. I'm not sure exactly why. Whether the Sea World voluntarily gave themselves in the chain of command food cycle, because I do know that there's a lot of people that feel the way I do, that will not eat beef, but they'll eat seafood. But I won't eat it anyway. I didn't mean to get into dietary issues. Did you know in one part of the world, I think it's in Indonesia, when they don't hold hands together, they do namaste, they hold it together in a shape of a lotus. Oh, it's in Cambodia. They do the lotus sign, the lotus flower sign, rather than this sign. They go namaste, namaste. The accents on the first syllable, namaste. I want to put all the music on right now. I know that Marianne doesn't like me too, but I'm in a mood right now that I said some things that touched me. I talked about some subjects that I sometimes find a little difficult to talk about. Yeshua's death. His not celebrating his birthday when he actually had it. I am crying, losing my grasp on reality. I am the ancient lion paving the passage for humanity. No. Now, Nadine's going to be one of our singers at our show. I want you to just listen to her voice. Just listen to her gift that she has. Just for a couple minutes. Like a few seconds. I am softly sinking past all the fear and calamity. And I'll be doing healing for you during the intro. Die to live like a mighty. Why are you leading me? Kind like a peace rally, turning, dancing inside of me. Turning, dancing inside of me. I am fighting, I am riding high on the fumes of mortality.
I am quickly dying to my egoic reality. Die to live like a mighty. Why are you eating me? Kind like a peach valley, turning dancing inside of me. Turning dancing inside of me. I will be great, grateful to everyone that walks in today. No matter how much I want, all that will take. Played in my brain so long that pushed you away. Made me insane. Made me insane, made me insane. Until I will be great, grateful to everyone. See God in every place. No matter how far I fell to wake up today. Choosing my heart to never push you away. Love all the same. Because I die to live like a mighty. Why are you eating me? Kind like a peach valley, turning dancing inside of me. Turning dancing inside of me. I am the I am. Carving God's soul in gravity.
I'd really appreciate it if you could post. I have no idea. Mariana's probably one of the few people in Barney that generally give me some insight. Randy, some of you will write back and say, Nick, could you do this? Could you do that? Would you do this in your show as opposed to that? I'd really appreciate it if you could give me some insight. I don't call it a show. I call this a gathering. Yeshua wants me to call it a gathering. It really is a gathering. Gathering of spirits from all around the planet, because you do come from all. Before this week is over, this particular gathering, this will be seen by people from Africa, from Israel, from Yemen, from Europe, South America, obviously all across Canada. So I would really appreciate I get some feedback in terms of whether you like this format and you want me to use a different format, whether you don't like this purple jersey I'm wearing. I'm looking at myself on the screen. To me it looks blue on my screen rather than purple, but everything's reversed, and I also have a 5-second delay. So when I'm watching my mouth speak, I'm speaking actually is not consistent with while I'm talking. And as I've often jokingly said, if somebody were to walk in right now and see me talking to my computer screen, they would call 9/11. So it's been great being with you. It's 6 o'clock right now. We're being together for an hour and 15 minutes. Thank you for your time. You're with me if you are still with me. If you're not, you don't know I'm saying goodbye right now, so it doesn't make a difference. But as always, I say to you, God bless you as you continue on your journey. And now my computer's going to say so long to you. I would like to hear from you. Do post. And don't wait for tomorrow. You can post tonight to say something. Yeah, Nick, the show was too long, it was too short, we want more of this, more of that, whatever. God bless you. Love every one of you.
Goodbye.